All right, we're recording. Guys, this is our second premiere video, and we hope you guys enjoy this. We're going to play it fast and loose. I have got with me host of RT's Crosstalk, Mr. Peter Lavelle, live from Moscow. And we have got live from London, the Oracle of London, editor-in-chief of the Duran, Alexander Mercouris. And so everyone joining us on this premiere and chatting as we discuss a lot of news topics, welcome. Of course, click that subscribe button, smash that like button, click that notifications bell. Duran shop, buy a t-shirt, 20% off all through the month of December. And of course, you can donate to the Duran on PayPal and Patreon. The links are in the description box down below. It helps us out a lot. And always, always go and get the podcast version of everything we do on iTunes and on SoundCloud. Guys, the floor is yours. Let's open it up. We have a lot of news from France to the UK to Trump in the Oval Office hanging out with Pelosi and Schumer. Peter, kick it off.
I was going to defer to Alexander Mercouris. What are the odds now? It looks like there's going to be a vote of no confidence on Theresa May.
Indeed.
On the back of Merkel caving and crumbling and cratering, on the back of Macron making a complete buffoon out of himself, 13 minutes of his life that he'll probably never forget and regret. But let's go to the trials and tribulations of the worst prime minister in the 20th century, maybe ever. Go ahead, Alex.
Well, believe it or not, some people are now actually formally going and writing in the mainstream media and calling her that. Now, as I understand it, there's going to be a vote of no confidence. We've been hearing about stories about this vote of no confidence. Her attempts to get to save a premiership by postponing the vote on her deal on Tuesday looks like it's failed, because I simply cannot believe that she's going to survive this vote today. I mean, it's inconceivable to me. The story is it's going to happen between 1800 and 2000 hours. That's when the Conservative MPs will be voting. It needs a bare majority to pass amongst these MPs. We should have a result by 2000 hours. I presume at 2000 hours, we will hear an announcement that Theresa May has lost. She will then stay as acting Prime Minister for a couple of days until the Conservative Party decides what it's going to do. Are they going to agree on someone, that's the Conservative Parliamentary Party, to take over? Or will there be an actual vote by the Conservative Party membership? Goodness knows. At this stage, everything is open.
So when people watch this premiere, they'll actually know the results of that vote.
Well, I think so. I mean, it could be later this evening, but we'll see. And can I also say that when we get that result tonight, this is something that should have been decided weeks ago. We're now just 4 months away from, less than 4 months away from Brexit Day, and the Conservative Party has left it to the wire. But we'll see. I mean, it could be as fast as this evening.
You know, one of the things about our technological world is that when we were watching the debate, all three of us were watching the debate in the House of Commons, and I think it was you, Alex Christoforou, noticed that right behind Theresa May, her leadership, they were all sitting like this, as if it was, this is your last chance, lady.
That was Mercouris, yeah. Yeah.
Well, it was obvious. I mean, they were furious. I mean, as I said, I come back to what I said at the time in one of our programs. If she'd come along and said to the House of Commons, I am postponing the vote because I've had a conversation with the Prime Minister of Ireland, and it looks like he's prepared to make certain proposals on the backstop that I need to consider. That would have been a reason for postponing the vote. She actually said she was postponing the vote because she was going to lose. I mean, that was an extraordinary thing to say. That I think really enraged many, many people.
Well, at least she was transparent.
Well, actually, Peter, you're giving her too much credit, because she was telephoning the Irish Prime Minister over the weekend. And it's now, I think, pretty obvious that what she was trying to get him to do was to play along with her and to come up with some kind of supposed offer that she would be able to say in the House of Commons on Tuesday was the reason why she wanted to put off the vote. But of course, the Irish have a very similar parliamentary system to the British. It's based on the same constitutional system. And he understood, I think, exactly what she was up to, and he refused to play along.
The interesting thing for me was the whole optics of it too, is that how far has Britain fallen? Okay, now she said on live television and live debate that basically she's going, well, maybe not hat in hand, but purse in hand to try to get concessions from the European Union. I mean, no position of strength, nothing. And she was very vague about it. What I thought was also very interesting is that members of parliament on both sides of the aisle read back to her own words over the last weeks and months. I mean, it was such a humiliation to go through. So, yeah. Alexander Mercouris, wouldn't it be better? I know that there's the mainstream media and the establishment is terrified of Jeremy, but is this really the only way for the Conservatives to get out of this mess, is to have a general election?
Well, it could be. I mean, there has been some talk now, far too late in the day, of forming a government of national unity, that is to say a coalition government, to try and negotiate Brexit and get it done. Now, if you go back to the very first articles I wrote on the Duran, just after the referendum result, I said that that was what I thought should happen. To leave it to this date now, just 4 months away from Brexit Day, it's impossibly late. I mean, I think our viewers need to understand that it is extremely unlikely now that we're going to have Brexit in March. Brexit is going to be delayed by several weeks or months at least.
Is this part of someone's plan? Is this the plan?
Well, it could very well have been. I mean, we were talking about this, Alex and I, in a video, in a program just a few days ago. Just a day or so ago. That it looks as if it could very well have been somebody's plan, because Theresa May was manoeuvred into an impossible position, but went on clinging on. So why she has behaved in this extraordinary fashion, destroying her reputation, destabilizing her government, is difficult to understand unless somebody was telling her basically to stay and keep going.
They're not letting her leave. They're not letting her leave. I saw it with Tsipras here in Greece. Everyone knew that the guy wanted to go. I mean, there's rumors that he was going to the hospital every day for panic attacks, but they didn't want him to leave. Yes. Whatever those, I mean, it's hard to explain what those powers that be are, the European Union.
Yeah, but this is the situation. I mean, who wants the job of prime minister in these circumstances? I mean, it's almost like handing someone, an instant fail card. You got the job, you fail, and they're synonymous. I mean, I think that's what's really the impasse right here. Not to speak of the fact that if this is an intentional plan, then, well, I guess, the curtain has been pulled away. There's no democracy, okay? I mean, you can draw so many different conclusions from this train wreck.
Well, indeed, so many conclusions. But to answer your question, Peter, there are plenty of people who want to be prime minister, despite the fact that it looks like an obvious fail. Boris Johnson being one of those people. And if Theresa May is voted out today, which I'm absolutely sure she will be in one form or another, then I predict Boris Johnson will be there pressing his claims, saying that he's the man to lead Britain through this hour, posing as Churchill, which he always does now.
New haircut, fresh haircut.
New hair, fresh haircut, all of that. So I'm afraid we could be seeing an awful lot of him over the next couple of days. I don't think he will be the man, but you never know.
And so we have the new Churchill or the next Churchill.
The new Churchill.
And let's move to the new Napoleon. France. Macron. What's going on in France now?
Well, I think that Macron has taken a bad situation and he's made it worse. I mean, I think his comments the other day from the Élysée Palace were extraordinarily ill-judged. I mean, first of all, what he's done is he's pushed France into financial deficit. I mean, the deficit figures, I think, and it's the budget deficit is now going to be bigger than Italy's. So we will see what the...
You just said the golden word, Italy. So is Brussels going to start beating up on Macron? They've been beating up on the Italians? Or is this going to be another glaring double standard here? This is a takeaway from you, from all of this here. I mean, Greece has been bankrupted for generations, because of deficits and whatnot. And the Italians are being threatened and sanctioned. And now, are they going to do it to Macron? I wonder.
Well, indeed. I mean, I think the Europeans are not pleased. I think he's lost an awful lot of faith with the Europeans now, and I don't think they will sanction France. I think they're going to be very angry with Macron. But that's in some ways, I thought his least mistake. I mean, his biggest mistake by far was making this. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen the photographs and the films of him speaking from this gilded room in the Élysée Palace.
What was he doing with his hands? Was he?
Well, I think he was. But I mean, on a Louis XVI's desk. I mean,
such bad optics.
Terrible optics. And I mean, it shows what a complete tin ear this man has. I mean, he clearly has no understanding of what ordinary people in France are going through, and he showed it. I mean, and the way the whole thing was conducted, I think, was going to be more provocative. I predict we're going to see more protests this weekend. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, but speaking of which, I think it's really important for us to point out here, and I've been saying over the series of videos that we've been making on this topic, we have to be very careful about the yellow vest movement and how it is evolving or might be evolving. We have to remember, and I think it's fair to say, the vast majority of the protesters are working people, and they have to go back to work, all right? I mean, have to make a living. Now, there's a group of people, and in the social sciences, it's called intryism, where you make, and it happens on the left, not the right, where people see, when there's a chaotic situation, they join the movement for their own personal agenda, not the agenda of the whole. And there's a danger here, and I want to say it now because we'll be on the record of saying it. We have to be careful that this doesn't morph into some kind of Antifa movement, because the smashers are there, which we all condemn any kind of violence, particularly against cultural artifacts. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I was excited about the yellow vests, because it's protecting France and its culture and its heritage and a sense of being. But we have this intryism we have to keep a very close eye on to make sure this movement isn't corrupted as it develops, if it develops at all, It's still very early days. And it's we had Xavier Moreau on Crosstalk on Sunday, and he told me that they would be able to sustain it on the weekends, but during the week they have to work.
Exactly.
Particularly if you're an hourly worker, you have to do this. So it's going to be very important how this moves forward. I want to watch if there's going to be some kind of leadership that comes out of this, and what their ideas on, if they can keep it together. But there's always this element of people that want to inject themselves in there for their own personal and very often kind of anarchy reasons. And I think we have to be very careful about it. And it's possible, That's why some social movements succeed and others fail. And it's the early periods when they have this interest articulation to how to move forward. We're still in that really early stage.
We're in a very early stage, and can I just also add, I mean, there's no question at all to my mind that there are criminal elements who are also making use of this thing. I mean, some of that rioting in Paris, of shops being looted and all the rest, is clearly the work, I would say, of criminal elements. Now, can I also add that, of course, it is unquestionably the case that the violence of some of these protesters or some of these elements is helping Macron. I mean, he is using it, and he is using it very hard. He is trying to use it in order to discredit the entire movement. And unfortunately, because the movement does not have clear leaders, it does not yet have an organization that enables it to control those violent elements. So yes, we are in a very combustible situation. It is very difficult to see where all this is going. The one thing I'm going to say is this: with Macron behaving as he is, projecting an image not of strength, because he's making concessions all over the place, but of arrogance. He is doing he's creating a situation where it seems to me the whole movement that we are now seeing in France is now crystallizing around one issue. Will Macron go or stay? I mean, it seems to me that this is now becoming the main demand. The main demand is for Macron to resign.
You know, the interesting thing about that, you know, one presumably would be because of social pressure. No, that won't be it. It'll be the group of people, the elites that put him in office in the first place. They're going to have to ask themselves the obvious question: what use is this guy? And if they find him not useful, then they will find a way to make him resign, because getting him out of office is near impossible. But forcing him to resign, yes. Okay. So if he loses the favor of the people that put him there, not the people, not elections, that's what's going to make the difference. And so these elites are going to be looking at social pressure, but basically they're going to say, hey, we put this guy in here to lower our taxes and raise theirs. Okay. If he's not going to do the job, he's of no value to us.
Exactly.
That means we won't be seeing Le Pen coming into office if that scenario plays out.
Right. This is where it all starts to get interesting, because of course if we get a situation where a protest movement is able to trigger events that will lead to the resignation of the president of France, then we are looking at a general weakening of the political system in France, the political structures that were created in the 1960s by General de Gaulle, and which we call the Fifth Republic. So at that stage, my guess is, by the way, that the instrument that would be used to force Macron's resignation would be a vote of no confidence in the French Parliament, the National Assembly. At that point, I suspect that what would happen is a lot of people would say, we cannot have an appointed president, we have to have an election. And we would see an election, and then I think Le Pen would be an important force in that election, because she would legitimately say, you scared the French people into voting for Macron in order to stop me, and look what you got.
All right. Well, let's cross the pond then and go to the U.S. at Washington, D.C., and right into the Oval Office. What was that, Peter? I mean, Trump, Pelosi, and Schumer. Wow.
Well, it shows again, and I mean, and we've been very critical of many of Trump's policies in our podcast here. But Trump again showed that he's a master communicator. I mean, he really ashamed Pelosi and Schumer, and Donald Trump had no choice but to do that on the wall. That was the single most important issue that he campaigned on. And he has dropped the ball repeatedly during his presidency in that regard. Now he wants to reaffirm that is going to be his signature issue. And as president of the United States, he actually has quite a few resources to build that wall. He can get it. I mean, he just gave it went from what, 716 to 780 billion dollars to the Pentagon. My numbers might be a little wrong, but it's approximately that. That's more than enough money to build a wall. Yeah, it could be a national defense issue. All right, it's not impossible. He has resources at his disposal. And the Democrats have never really been able to explain why a wall is a bad idea. They keep tripping up on that, okay? So, I mean,
It's a moral issue.
I mean, if the United States is going to spend billions of dollars on other countries' border defenses, why doesn't it spend it on its own country?
Pelosi said it, though. It's a moral issue, right? Right, guys?
I'm sorry. Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi have no moral standing to talk about morality, okay? They both support abortion, for example, okay? So don't talk to me about morality. That's just American doublespeak. It's ridiculous. When they say it's not moral, it means they have no argument against your argument. That's how that works.
Alexander, what's your take on
the
Oval Office?
Well, first of all, I think Peter's absolutely right. It shows Donald Trump is a master of communications. He's extremely skilled at communicating to his base. And of course, he put Pelosi and Schumer, who have no real experience or understanding of how to do it, entirely on the defensive. I mean, for me, the moment that really captured it was when they argued. Schumer said, elections count for something, and Trump fired back, yes, they do. Because, of course, he is the elected president of the United States. And I mean, I think that the Pelosi and Schumer were left floundering. And of course, on this thing, the wall, Donald Trump knows that he has a popular issue behind him. I mean, this is something that most Americans actually, I think, support him on. So he's playing it for all it's worth. Now, coming back to what Peter said, Donald Trump is a very, very clever politician. He knows how to
on issues that he's passionate about. Let's have a caveat there, okay?
Well, I was going to say, he's a very clever politician. He's got his connection to his base. He is not proving to be a good manager. He doesn't know how to control the US government. He still hasn't found how to pull the levers to make things work. And that's the great weakness that he has. And that's the weakness that Schumer and Pelosi are exploiting. The reason they are
blocking... John Bolton. And
all these people. But the reason the Democrats are stopping him from building the wall is not because they have any great moral objections to it. I mean, Obama also did all kinds of things along the Mexican border. The reason they're stopping him building the wall is because it makes him look ineffective as president. It makes it look as if he cannot deliver on one of the central things that he promised. And in a way, what we saw in the Oval Office is Donald Trump at his best, putting Schumer and Pelosi in a very embarrassing position, not knowing how to respond to what he says.
In front of the cameras, but also at his weakest, because it also shows that he doesn't know how to get the wall built, and he therefore has to engage in these kind of stunts in order to embarrass his opponents. We will see whether he will gradually, with a new chief of staff, he's having problems finding a chief of staff, apparently, with a new chief of staff, he's able to move forward with this entirely conventional policy. I mean, people talk about this wall as if, we're talking about, the sort of Berlin Wall or something like that, something absolutely monstrous. It isn't. It's a very simple policy. And we will see whether he's able to get it somehow implemented, because, as I said, I think that is what the Democrats' calculation is. They're going to show him unable to carry out what, for many people, I think, has become almost his flagship policy now. And meanwhile, you have John Bolton and Mike Pompeo running rampage across the world. I mean, see, this is one of the things I really find fascinating living abroad. Is that when I watch American cable, the world really doesn't exist, in their broadcasts. But it does exist, and the U.S. is very active, obviously, around the world, and mostly in detrimental ways, even to U.S. national security. So this is one of the things that's really, the next 2 years is going to be very interesting to watch with the new Congress, is that you're going to have the Bolton Pompeo. We're going to have to find out who's got the upper hand there. I've heard there's a lot of squabbling among them. And neither one is a snowflake, that's for sure, because Trump is going to be more and more absorbed domestically. And if we take the Democrats at their word, anywhere from massive investigations of him and his family, to calls for his impeachment. And I think that the impeachment process will pick up steam. I don't know if it'll go anywhere, but it's going to suck all of the oxygen out of the room. And Trump is. We know Trump doesn't take any slight lightly. Okay, he'll be reacting to it, and that's what his opponents have learned about Donald Trump. If you want to get his attention, it's really easy to do it. Okay, and I think that's weakness of Trump. And trying to swing at every single ball that comes his way. That's his nature. I mean, he's 72? He's not going to change.
Well, that's right.
Does Trump have Alexander? Does Trump have an HR problem in who he's hiring and who he's putting in these positions? He's now removed Haley and he's replaced her with Heather Nauert.
He has a huge HR problem.
He's got a new DOJ. What's going on there with all?
Yeah, I mean, he has a huge HR problem. He does not know. He does not know his way around Washington. He does not know how to make the right picks. He's continuously picking people who are either useless, like now it's going to be useless, or who are actively working against him. As Jeff Sessions and Rod Rosenstein in Justice were. So he's never really sorted that out. And now he's not even got a chief of staff because. Do you
like his pick, Alexander? Very quickly, do you like his pick for the DOJ?
Well, apparently, a lot of people say.
I've heard good things. I mean,
lots of things, but I was really badly burnt with DOJ people because I shudder to say this. I thought that Robert Mueller might be a good person to sort of clean up the mess of Russiagate, and how utterly wrong I was. But Barr does seem to be a solid person with a solid reputation. The only thing is, he's very much an establishment figure again. He's somebody who comes straight from within the US establishment. I wonder whether he's given any assurances to Trump, and I wonder whether or not he is going to be the person to really bring this whole this issue, this conflict between Trump and the DOJ to an end. I just wonder whether this person isn't also going to side with the DOJ against Trump, which will simply continue the dysfunction of the administration.
The question really gets down to, for me, and I mean, and you see this with FBI Director Wray. I mean, is this new Attorney General going to be more focused on protecting the institution that he runs, or will he go there with a big broom and clean it out and get rid of all the Peter Strzok's and Lisa Pages and and all these other people, or is he just going to sweep it under the rug? Okay, we have to remember, they have institutional concerns. That's their department, and from what we've heard from the Democrats, they want all of this microscope on the DOJ and the FBI. They want it to go away, and really.
They do. The only thing I would say is that, of course, it looks like Lindsey Graham is now positioning himself to take over the Senate Judiciary Committee, and he's lobbying hard for these investigations to be continued by the Senate Judiciary Committee. And he's again floating the idea of a special counsel being appointed to actually investigate all these issues. So maybe it's not completely ended, and Lindsey Graham might turn out to be a useful ally to Trump in the Senate. We shall see. But with this situation at Justice, let's be absolutely clear about this. Justice is the critical department for Trump. He's got to get that right. He's got to be sure when he gets Barr that he's got the right person. I'm not sure how he came to pick Barr. I'm not sure what advice he got to get Barr. I'm not sure what discussions have had between them. And if Barr is a man of integrity, and people say he is, he will be very concerned by the things that have gone wrong in Justice. He will be very concerned about what Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and Bruce Orr and James Comey, let's not forget James Comey, and all of those people were up to. And he will want to clean it out because it is in the interests of the institution itself that it be cleaned out. But will he do it? we will see.
Well, one of the criticisms of his candidacy comes from the libertarian side of the Republican Party. Rand Paul is not happy with Barr's position on the Patriot Act 1 and 2 and civil liberties. So that's kind of interesting. We're going to learn more about him, but I agree. I'd be very curious how his name popped up, because he was AG under Bush.
Bush, exactly. Yeah. Yes. I mean, he could be the right man to steady the ship and to, as I said, bring Mueller under control, get this wretched investigation ended, and clean it out. I mean, he could be that kind of a person. But, I have to say, I don't know very much about him, other than what I've heard. And what I've heard is partly reassuring, but partly not. As I said, he seems to me very much an establishment man. And I don't think Donald Trump himself cares very much about the things that Rand Paul and the libertarian wing care about. I don't think he's very worried about those things. I'm sorry about that, by the way. I care about them. But
this issue of, I mean, they're mulling now. You said Lindsey Graham and another special prosecutor. I don't know. That cuts both ways with me. I mean, is this now going to be a tradition? I mean, just investigation at cross purposes and everything. It seems to me, I mean, on the one hand, I think yes, okay, because I would like to know the full truth of what happened instead of hiding it. But then on the other hand, then every single administration is going to have to start facing these kinds of investigations. I think it's counterproductive. It's a toss-up at this point.
Right. I have an absolutely clear view about this. I think it absolutely needs to be investigated. I mean, if the Justice Department behaves as it was doing during the 2016 election, launching investigations of one of the campaigns based on hearsay and a document, the Steele dossier, which was paid for by one of the candidates in order to discredit another.
At the end of the day, what Rosenstein should have done, but because I think the guy's a schmuck, okay, what he should have done is said everything to do with the 2016 election, not this quote-unquote mythical, like a unicorn Russian collusion, okay?
Absolutely.
And that's why this investigation has been so very selective. If you want to know how selective it is, watch Morning Joe, then watch Hannity. And that tells you the difference of what's going on here.
It's not just selective, Peter. It is straightforwardly biased, because what it is now doing is that it is actually trying to construct a case. I mean, when we have the situation where it now looks as if an investigation that was supposed to look into Russian meddling in the election and possible collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians starts going down the route of investigating payoffs to possible girlfriends of Donald Trump.
Extortion.
Exactly. I mean, that is... And with people now talking about impeaching the President of the United States on that basis, then, as I said, then I mean, really, I mean, this is a investigation that isn't an investigation at all. It's a hit. It's a hit. It's a hit squad trying to build a case against Donald Trump so as to remove him, and that, I think, in itself is a serious matter.
Yeah, and how many millions of dollars, taxpayers' dollars, has the House of Representatives paid off to women that made allegations against sitting Congress men? I mean, absolutely ridiculous.
I mean,
I want to be very clear with everyone here. If Trump is going to be impeached, fine. Make sure it's for a good reason, all right? Because the people that are just, now he's paying off a girlfriend. I mean, you're trivializing the institutions, the presidency, and the law. If someone needs to be impeached, it must be done the right way for a good reason, or else the whole idea of impeachment is in tatters. See, I've been saying this for years now, is that this blind hatred of Donald Trump is destroying institutions. All the people in Congress will be gone one day. Trump will be out of the White House one day. But those institutions should work, and they're destroying those institutions and the faith people have in those institutions. You don't need outside meddling to screw up American democracy. They're doing it to themselves.
Absolutely right. That is absolutely correct. And can I simply say, I mean, it seems to me that siding with two women who were paid a lot of money and then essentially came back for more, because that seems to be what it amounts to. If the Democrats are stupid enough to try impeachment proceedings against Donald Trump on the strength of that, saying that he violated campaign funding laws, which he probably didn't, by the way. I mean, this
or Alexander, the flip side, everybody violates them. They are so complicated.
Obama did it.
Obama did it, exactly. I mean, I'm not even sure that was what happened, actually. I mean, I think if the Democrats start impeachment proceedings on that, then frankly, it's going to backfire on them big. I think the American people will not be impressed. It is impossible to see these two women as victims in any conceivable way. This is, I mean, we could...
Guys, is it fair to say, though, that, Alexander, Peter, that the Democrats don't have much of a choice but to move towards impeachment? I mean, is that not what their base is demanding? I mean, this is the red meat that they have been wanting now for 2 years. So, I mean, they're going to have to impeach them on something, and they don't have Russia, but they have a porn star and a Playboy centerfold.
Well, indeed. Exactly. And I mean, I think you're right. And I think this is possibly, I mean, it's what they've maneuvered themselves into.
Clinton Assgate, okay? Yeah. Wow. Well, how dignified is that, okay? Really? It's ridiculous.
Well, it's going to bring the whole of the United States into extraordinary disrepute right across the world. I mean, Monica Lewinsky, you could argue when Bill Clinton did what he did with her, that she was a victim because she was very young, she was an intern, and she'd been brought into the White House. And
Trump's women were professionals.
Exactly. There's no conceivable way that you could paint these two as victims of anything, frankly. And as I said...
I'm going to go further. Trump is the victim in this, okay? You give money to say, okay, you be quiet about it, okay? It's our personal thing here. And then they bring it out in the public. Who's the victim here?
Well, I mean, it's a blackmail. It's a straightforward blackmail thing. I mean, as I said, they got a lot of money out of Donald Trump, and they clearly wanted to get more. And of course, in the case of Stormy Daniels, it's backfired on her because she brought a case and she's lost. And she's now going to have to pay him a lot of costs. But
let me bring up one more topic here before we conclude. I guess in a few hours' time, there's going to be a possible vote in the Senate on Yemen, which I think is really very important. Mm-hmm. I'm very impressed that there has actually been some momentum building to have a debate, a real debate about American involvement in the Saudi-led war against Yemen. So that, and it really is so painful and actually disgusting watching the State Department in the White House continue to support this conflict that the U.S. Congress never voted on, and the American people were barely aware of until a few weeks ago with the death of an insider/journalist, Khashoggi. So I think we need to keep an eye on that. Maybe Congress is growing a pair and actually going back to the Constitution about advice and consent when it comes to American military action abroad.
What was Khashoggi the turning point?
Yeah, that was what put it in the spotlight. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of us and probably our viewers have known what's going on in Yemen for a long time. But what is it? And I don't know if it's true, but I was told that for 1 year. On MSNBC, Yemen was never mentioned once. I don't know if that's true, but I've heard that.
I think it probably was true, actually. I mean, the media here in Britain barely covered Yemen. Now, since Khashoggi is dead, they're talking about it a lot. And I mean, it took the death of one person who writes at the Washington Post, who lives in the United States, who's very well connected with people in liberal media, to focus people's attention on Yemen. But perhaps we should be grateful for small mercies, as we say in Britain. And if it did take Khashoggi's murder to do that, well, just as well in some ways that people are now paying attention.
The interesting thing here is that the motivation about voting, debating and voting on Yemen probably has very little to do with the people of Yemen, unfortunately. It's really elements of the deep state that want to chuck the crown prince, okay? They don't want him, okay? He's not there. And so they're using this as a segue, all right? Because this is, I think I've said it before, the American media doesn't like to talk too much about Israel, and it hates talking about Saudi Arabia. And this is the worst nightmare for the House of Saud. So much attention on its nefarious activities around the world.
Alexander, very quickly, before you answer, very quickly, and I want your take on this. Did the deep state get freaked out when they saw MBS and Putin high-fiving each other at G20? They said, look, this guy's definitely got to go.
Absolutely, because I think that horrified them, because it was the very last thing the United States wants is any kind of alliance. When I say the United States, I mean the deep state, any kind of alliance between the Saudis and the Russians, and of course, especially one to stabilize and take control of the oil market, because so much of US power is based around the oil market. I don't think people really understand this, but to repeat a point I've made many times, the reserve currency status of the dollar is based on the fact that in order to buy oil, you have to pay for it in dollars. And because oil is the world's most important internationally traded commodity, no industrial economy can function without it. It means that every country in the world has to have dollars in order to buy oil. Now, if anything happens where the Russians and the Saudis get together, not just to control the oil price, but eventually to control the whole market and how it is paid for, how oil is paid for, that is an existential threat to the global position of the United States. And they will not be happy to see Putin and MBS and the Saudis coming together in the way that they did in Buenos Aires. I mean, it'd be horrifying to them. But can I just say something which goes back to a point that Peter made? Yes, I think now there is an agenda to target MBS, and I think this has become fairly clear over the last few weeks. But of course, there are also elements in the deep state which are using the Khashoggi affair and the Yemen war in order to embarrass Donald Trump. And to be absolutely clear about this, on the Yemen war, Donald Trump is on the wrong side. I mean, he is backing
and we have war. This week, maybe today, a CIA briefing with members of Congress, which the White House did not want to happen. So again, Trump makes a pick for the CIA, and the CIA has its agenda. Okay, so it's very, very interesting.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, and I think Donald Trump, I think by making that statement in support essentially of MBS, I think he expressed himself in such brutally realist language that once again, in a way, I actually respected him for doing that, because it's unusual for American, to put it mildly, unusual for American presidents to say things so frankly.
You can't say he's not transparent.
He's not, exactly. I mean, he said it very clearly, very simply, why the US backed Saudi Arabia. And I respect him for this. But of course, for the political class in the United States, who like everything to be sort of decked out in morality, moralizing, and cliches, I think it, shocked a lot of people. And I think it might actually, on the floor of the Senate, have done him some harm.
All right, and tied in, yeah, Peter?
I was just going to say, I mean, we always have to keep in mind that this is the petrodollar element is absolutely spot on correct. However, what is very important, we've been seeing this repeatedly, if you are paying attention, the U.S. administration is lining up its ducks with its Iran campaign. And it needs Saudi Arabia and it needs Israel completely on board, because they want the U.S. to be on board. This is a cabal here, and MBS is he projects the lack of stability, and he's really an erratic decision maker. What is conceivable conceivable is that MBS will ignite a conflict with Iran, hoping the U.S. and the Israelis will come to his aid to change the narrative. Okay, he needs a change of narrative, and going to war is one of them. So this is a very, very dangerous moment that we're in right now, because he needs to get out from out under this cloud, or else he might, be internal rivals and may depose him. But if he's the commander-in-chief at war with the evil Shia, that can change the storyline for him. It's a dramatic decision to make, but that would change the storyline.
All right.
And,
yeah, Alexander.
Peter's absolutely right about that. And of course, I should add that, he's been talking, the things he says about Iran are absolutely, they freeze the blood. They are awful. I remember reading one of his interviews in which he talked about Iran, and he basically said that there is no possibility of peace with Iran, almost regardless of what kind of government it has or what kind of policies it follows. So, we are talking about someone with a very, very closed sectarian mind where Iran is concerned, with a propensity for violence, who makes very reckless and impetuous decisions, and I'm afraid he's the kind of person I can easily see starting a war. I agree with Peter on this completely.
All right, and before I give you guys one final question, which is tied into MBS and Khashoggi, guys, smash that like button, spread the word about the Duran channel. Also send us a super chat if you're chatting right next to this premiere. Send us a super chat, buy a t-shirt, 20% off of the Duran shop. Peter and Alexander, Times, I was going to say man of the year, person of the year, is Khashoggi and journalists. What do you think of that, and who would you have picked for the person?
Oh no, I think this is a sign of the extraordinary self-importance and self-indulgence the journalists have. Khashoggi is not the man of the year. That's a ridiculous idea.
Well, when the title journalist, it conjures up mixed ideas in my head. Look at Julian Assange. Okay, are they thinking about Julian Assange, or they were thinking about Khashoggi? Okay, right. And I think the profession of journalism is a disgrace. There's nothing to honor journalists today. Stenographers for power. It's disgraceful. Time, the disgrace.
In your minds, who had the biggest impact 2018?
I have to say, Donald Trump has had the biggest impact in 2018. He is still making the news. If things to an extraordinary degree revolve around him. I don't always agree with what he's doing. I'm putting it mildly. But he is somebody you have to follow all the time. The other person who's made a big impact in 2018, well, two people are the two presidents of Korea. They made a huge initiative to bring peace to Korea, and they've done it together. And we will see where President Moon and Chairman Kim manage over 2019. But if you want to talk about achievement, that is where the big achievement has been. If you want to talk about impact on the news, shaping what's going on in the world, I'm afraid it's Donald Trump still. Well,
do we have to give it to a person? Maybe we can give it to a thing. I would say I think red pilled. Okay, I think because a lot of people have been red pilled this year, and I give a lot of credit to Jordan Peterson. I know he's a dreadful person for so many, but for me, he's a hero. So Jordan Peterson's red pill. Maybe I'll settle on that.
That's a good one. Very good. All right, guys. That was our second premiere. Peter Lavelle, host of RT's Crosstalk in Moscow, and Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran in London. Great premiere, guys. Good discussion. Everyone who was chatting, we look forward to reading what you guys are saying on the chat next to this premiere. And tune in for more premieres coming your way. Everybody, thank you for your support, and thank you for following the Duran channel. Spread the word about the Duran channel. Share it with all your friends. And of course, subscribe to the channel and click that notifications bell to get all the videos that are going to be coming out this week, and also iTunes and Soundcloud to get the audio podcast of all our shows. Gentlemen, great show.
Till next time.
Until next time, everybody. Take care.
Take care.